what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Phil Perry will be along in just a second. I just want to set the table a little bit for this critical Patriots offseason. We've seen them in free agency, and now we've heard from them as they lead toward the draft. And there are myriad people involved in the decisions to be made, as we see with the contingents heading out to see Jaden Daniels and Drake May on consecutive days to scout the quarterbacks for a team with the number 3 pick. Who's got his hands at 10-2 on this franchise right now? Seems to be Elliott Wolf. Here's Robert Kraft this week speaking about Wolf and his vision for what his personnel department should do.
I think Elliott has good training, good pedigree, and we actually have a good group of young people. I'll tell you, we're starting new chapters in our development and as we evolve here. And I like the young people we have doing this. You know, we were in an environment previously where everything really funneled to the top. And maybe some of the young people that have worked real hard didn't get a chance to have their positions heard or maybe didn't speak up as much. I've encouraged them to be collaborative, and I think the combination of Gerard and Matt and together with Elliott I'm actually excited what I've seen. And, you know, that also sort of ties in with how players have changed too, really, over the last 10, 15 years, and how systems have changed. So I think they're in tune, and I'm excited. And I mean, some people call me an eternal optimist, so I don't know how much you should take what I say, but I'm excited by what's going on and the process, and they're very thorough. So I'm excited by what I've seen so far, and we'll evaluate after the draft and see how that's gone and decide where we go from there.
So here's a list of the Drake May contingent that on Thursday was in North Carolina. You had Gerard Mayo, Elliott Wolf, Alex Van Pelt, the offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach T.C. McCartney, senior offensive assistant Ben McAdoo, director of player personnel Matt Groh, senior personnel advisor Patrick Stewart, senior personnel executive Alonzo Highsmith, and national scout Matt Evans. That all according to Albert Breer. Meanwhile, the college scouting director Cameron Williams and personnel coordinator Brian Smith were both at Daniels, and they are on the road elsewhere. Washington also has a pro day, and Michael Penix is out there. But let's talk for a second about group dynamics. Certainly through the vision of Robert Kraft, you have a big group of people here, many of whom have not worked together before, many of whom are wondering about their jobs and their futures, not just Elliott Wolf, who understands the Patriots are going to continue to talk to GM candidates after the season, but guys like Matt Groh. And all these individuals are in charge of picking the players that they will then hand over to a first-year head coach. Elliott Wolf is almost certainly not going anywhere. He hired Highsmith, Van Pelt, etc. You're not going to have him around to form the staff just to poop can him later because somebody else looks better in June or July. It's just not going to happen. That's not their intention. But everybody from Wolf to Groh to Highsmith to Alex Van Pelt is going to look at this as an opportunity to prove their worth, show what they've got, act on their vision for what they think an offense should look like. Who's going to make it all coalesce properly between all these personalities who don't really know each other perhaps that well? Belichick used to say, you cannot orchestrate chemistry. You can bring guys in, but you don't put them next to each other in the locker room and say, you like him and you're going to like him and you guys are going to get along great. It just doesn't work that way. It has to be organic. And with so many different dynamics exerting themselves on this Patriots personnel staff, I'm not going to say that there's competing interests, but with so many there, it could be difficult to have them dovetail. it's going to be hard. And this isn't pining for Bill's way of doing things. The recent big decisions that he made at quarterback in 2019 and in 2021 and in 2022, in free agency, at wideout, at left tackle, that's why the change was made. And the Patriots didn't want him to run this rebuild at all those positions, in essence. But in lieu of him running it, there's a whole lot of trust in Elliott Wolf to get it right. And there are so many options. Trade down, take May, take McCarthy. What do you do about Jaden Daniels if he's sitting there? What constitutes a quote unquote bag? What's the correct bag? Success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan. And I'm not saying that this isn't the way to go about it. It's just that these guys need trust that they are doing things correctly, or at least using the right process. Let's bring our guy Phil in here. Well, there he is, Phil Perry, fresh off a stint on the television/radio. Phil, with all these different competing interests, how do the Patriots make sure that there is unanimity and nobody's sitting there going, this isn't what I want to do. This is the wrong thing to do.
Here's what I think is good about the situation that the Patriots have right now is that there's not going to be unanimity. I think competing interests are good because I think you're going to find that leads to conversations that get to the bottom of who these players really are.
Mm-hmm.
Having well-reasoned, well-formulated arguments when there are those kinds of disagreements, I think is healthy. And I think that's what they're actually looking for. I think that's what Robert Kraft is trying to foster with the number of talented people that they have in the front office. Now, I think where you can run into trouble with competing interests is if you're making those arguments in bad faith.
Right.
And maybe you don't realize you're doing it in bad faith, but if you have biases that you're not acknowledging and you're fighting because you have something else in the back of your mind that you think is what's in the best interests of you and not the team, then that's where you could run into trouble. But I think they feel as though they have people that are not going to be doing that bad faith sort of argument.
Yeah, I mean, TJ McCartney and Alex Van Pelt are going to want a quarterback. Gerard just wants somebody good over there. I think that Gerard, if you hit him with the truth serum, he'd say, they're going to figure that out. That's why we have Elliott. That's why we have Alex. That's why we have Ben McAdoo. That's why we have TJ McCartney, who's McCarthy, who's the quarterback's coach. But they all have a vested interest in it being a quarterback. Then you have Matt Groh, for instance. How does he feel about Elliott Wolf being the GM? And a lot of these guys, as reported, I believe, by Albert, have expiring contracts still that will expire after the draft. So in theory, collaboration's awesome. But I think you and I can collaborate and disagree in a very solid way because we know there's mutual trust. We're both working at the same goal. But when the goal is more ambiguous as to your personal space, then it's harder.
Yeah, it is. I think it is harder, especially when you're talking about the big picture decision. If you're just talking about, do we take a quarterback at 3 or not? That to me is a little bit tougher. Where I encourage disagreement is
on the player.
Do we take Drake May or do we take Jaden Daniels? Or do we take JJ McCarthy? So the approach to me does have to be spearheaded by 3 people. And that really is it. So Matt Groh, you're not in the room. TC McCartney, you certainly aren't in the room for this. Alex Van Pelt, when we are deciding between quarterbacks, then you come on and you have a seat at the table and we want to hear from you. Otherwise, it's Gerard Mayo, it's Elliott Wolf, and it is Robert Kraft. And if you want to have a seat in there for Jonathan Kraft, then you have to have a seat in there for Jonathan Kraft. But that is a big picture, franchise-altering decision, and I don't want that many voices. I don't want 9 voices when it comes to do we trade back or not.
It's really interesting because, that'll be a fascinating thing to watch on draft night. How many people are in the Patriots draft room and how active are they in terms of wandering around and looking over people's shoulders? This brings us to our second topic. Robert Kraft at the owners' meetings, delivering a message about what he hopes to see this year. And I wrote about this because this stands apart, I think, in an off-season of statements as the most rudderless of all statements. Here's Robert talking about expectations in the playoffs.
My hope and expectations is to make the playoffs. That's something realistically. We have a new leadership team. We're going to have a lot of young players. We don't know. You know, a lot can happen. We might struggle more than I want, but the good news, and when you're running any business, is you try to figure out what the key variables are, and then you try to put people in place that you think can react and adapt to what has to happen. I really feel we have a good young team, and I just hope we don't struggle.
Under promise, over deliver. Do not mention the postseason except to say it'll be nice to get back there sooner rather than later. Don't talk about this year. And then don't follow it up with, I hope we don't struggle, on a couple of different occasions mentioning struggling. You're going to struggle. It's going to be a struggle. All of it. Roster's not good. Rookie quarterback, you name it. I mean, they're staring up at Everest here, trying to get back to where they were. As I said the other day, they need to have a more clear practice in messaging, because this year's phrase that's going to stick around is going to be expect to make the playoffs and or top-rate young quarterback. Whoever comes in to play quarterback, Phil, it'll be, well, is that a top-rate young quarterback like Robert asked? And what if it isn't? You're pulling away opportunities from your personnel people to have the latitude to do whatever they want to do at the top of the draft. Because most people are going to say Michael Penix is not a top-rate young quarterback and Bo Nix barely qualifies, if at all. So the messaging, we talked about it a little the other day. Let's do it again.
No, I agree. This in terms of setting the expectations for your fans is an issue. If that's what you care about, you have not set yourselves up for success in this regard. And I do look to ownership here, because there is not a clear hierarchy, Tom. Think about how the messages have been disseminated this offseason and just in the last week or so. You know, you have Gerard Mayo, who, again, he's at the owners' meetings. He's talking to everyone there, and he's deferring to Elliot Wolf on personnel decisions. Robert Kraft is deferring to Elliot Wolf in some way, in a roundabout way, when meeting with people in Orlando, by saying, well, we want to do whatever we think is the right thing to do. And he's talking about potentially trading down, and he's saying that he trusts his young team. He's talking about Mayo and Elliott, essentially, and maybe Matt Groh is somewhere in that mix, but we know Elliot Wolf has final say on personnel. And so they're both sort of deferring to Elliot Wolf in the same week where all the most important people in the NFL are meeting in Orlando, and Elliot Wolf's not there because he doesn't have the general manager title, Tom, and he's not guaranteed his job beyond the draft. So you have the coach who's deferring to ownership and Elliott, and you have ownership who's deferring to the coach and Elliott, and you have Elliott who's not even there because he doesn't have a title yet. Who is leading the charge here? Who? The fans don't know, and I think that's part of the reason why the message has been murky. Is because the hierarchy within the organization right now is murky as well.
Yeah, and on occasions we've had to speak to the owner, Robert Kraft. I have expressed my mystification at what the plan is. You're going to just do this, and so what are you saying? You have $100 million of cap space. You have the third overall pick, and then in May or June you might pick a new guy. That doesn't seem to make sense. But that's why, in lieu of an answer, which we really did not get when that was broached, it tends to feel like this is a bag job, that he is the general manager, but still, until you're hired, you're not hired. So it's an odd situation. And again, your dismount from Belichick, if you saber rattled as much as Robert Kraft did for the last few years, and you've seen the results in free agency and you've seen the results in the draft, and you have a 4-13 team that's dysfunctional and Bill has made bad decisions, yes, follow through on your promise that you're going to move on. But when you move on, however cogent your plan is going to matter. And 2 months, I just have a feeling that sometime in 2028, you and me are going to look back and go, 2024 was pretty up. You bleep that, John.
That was a wild time.
Might
be right.
So back to top rate young quarterback, Phil. That's going to be the measuring stick. Hit me with your impressions of Daniels, and how much can May improve or demolish his chances being the 3rd overall pick?
I don't think he can demolish his chances at a pro day. Pro days are so well choreographed that there's very little, in my opinion, to gain from a pro day. Now, you do have people like Scott Zolak who, by his own admission, he's not watching every game of these guys in real time as they're happening. So he sees somebody like JJ McCarthy work from under center and he says, wow, really nice feet. He knows what he's doing in terms of his footwork, getting out from behind center when most college quarterbacks don't. And so that impresses someone like him. Does that really make a wave one way or the other for NFL people? I kind of doubt it. I think they want to see how they interact with their teammates.
Because they've already seen it.
They've already seen it.
Yeah.
They haven't seen it. They haven't seen it for somebody like Daniels or May. But again, they know that going in. So if it's sloppy from under center with no pads on, when you played 3, 4, 5 years and you never took a snap under center hardly, that's not going to ding you too much, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is how you interact with your teammates, maybe what staffers are saying about you on a day like that. Patriots had 9 people at Jaden Daniels pro day. They'll have 8 at Drake Mays. You can do all sorts of crowdsourcing in terms of what these guys are like behind the scenes. And the interviews. I think the interviews really matter. They'll have a chance to meet with these guys and talk with them, and all of those are valuable in my opinion. Now, the interesting things with Daniels to me from his pro day. Number one, he weighed in at 210 pounds, which I think is actually a positive for him.
Mm-hmm.
Though I would still be concerned if I'm an NFL team, because if he has been working furiously to put on weight since the end of his college season, which was months ago, to now, and he's still only 210, which is, let's be honest, on the lighter side, especially for a guy who's 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah, 6'4", yep.
Then that's a bit of a concern, because is his stomach just loaded with water or protein shakes or whatever it is to weigh him down on his pro day? And then he can pee like Austin Powers before he has to actually go throw out on the practice field, and he's fine. And he's actually weighing at 202. That's a concern for me. And it's especially a concern because of his play style, which is so scramble heavy. He's great from the pocket, but there are some numbers that Nate Tice, who does work for The Athletic and for Yahoo, does a great job of tracking some of this stuff with some advanced numbers. He found that when pressured, Jaden Daniels, on 50% of his dropbacks, he's either scrambling or taking a sack.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really high number. For only 50% of those dropbacks, when pressured to result in throws, is a low number. And so that to me would be a little concerning if you're skinny.
Veering real quick for the hell of it, just to JJ McCarthy, we had all those numbers that our friend Thor gave us. Just by way of example, a scrambling JJ McCarthy is a better thrower than a scrambling Jaden Daniels, statistically, at least from last year. Smaller sample size for McCarthy because he was on a different style team, but he's as good as it gets in terms of footwork and fundamentals, probably among the 4 of them. Phil, is that conceivable?
He might be, but his arm's not as good. And so,
it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's kind of a B+ arm, which is.
Is it as good as Mays? Because he threw with velocity that was superior to Mays, I believe, at the combine.
May didn't throw at the combine. So,
okay. So no,
but he did have a good
61 miles an hour.
61. Yeah. For whatever that's worth. No, his arm's not as strong as May's is what scouts would tell you. And May is bigger and stronger physically. And so he has moments where, he's got defensive tackles on him and he's still able to throw a 15-yard out and put it on the money in certain instances. So it's that reliance on the scramble. Are your eyes, every time you're pressured, do your eyes come down? And when you do move off your spot, like for Daniels, I actually would love to see just the sheer number of throws on the run, Daniels to McCarthy, because everyone looks at McCarthy and says, well, he barely threw. He might have almost the same number of on the run types of throws as Jaden Daniels, because when Daniels starts to move, he does not throw.
Mm-hmm.
He moves to run. And it's like this binary proposition for Daniels. He's either throwing from the pocket or he's scrambling. There's not a lot of creativity in his game, which is a little weird to try to envision because he is such a great athlete.
Yeah, there's creativity when he begins to run. There's creativity in being elusive and escaping to run. But the same thing, really, again, and I'm not really pumping JJ McCarthy to an extent, even though Thor made me excited about him. But he's got some innovation in his running and his escapability. And that's the thing. If you guys want to jump online and look at some JJ McCarthy highlights, he is constantly 2 hands on the ball, eyes scanning downfield as he's running, always trying to get the shoulders, squared to where he's trying to throw. He's not wide open. It's not a mess. It's noticeable. All that said, Phil, with Daniels, with May, with McCarthy, with these pro days, we're very quarterback centric right now, but I feel right now, maybe it's just the amount of time we've had to spend on this conversation. Maybe it's us just pointing out the real amazing value you can get for that third overall pick for a rebuilding team. But we're hearing much more trade down conversation. And when Gerard Mayo says that we will consider a bag, to me, for the Patriots, you have to get Minnesota's first round pick next year to constitute a bag. That almost predicates the entire move. What are you getting in 2025? If you get 11 and 23 from Minnesota and next year's first round pick to couple with your own for next year, you can do an amazing number of things. Phil, what constitutes a bag, do you think? And then we'll get into some of the deals that we've seen made to move up.
So what constitutes a bag for me?
11 and 23 isn't a bag.
My willingness to do it? Yeah, no. It starts with 11, 23 and a future first. That's where I start to consider it.
Okay.
And I would prefer, honestly, I'd prefer more because, Tom, I like these quarterbacks enough to take them at 3. And to me, the odds on you hitting on all of those picks and making it all work out and trading up and finding that quarterback that you love, I don't know. I don't know what next year looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not confident in next year's quarterbacks class. And guys do pop up out of nowhere, as Daniels did this year, and have success and could end up being great options. But that's still an unknown to me. And I'm looking at Drake May and Jaden Daniels now, and I'm saying these guys have the potential to be franchise changers. And boy, I'm not sure I'd do that in terms of giving that up for 4 first-round picks. I really don't. Because I think that position is that valuable, and I don't love the pie in the sky idea is that you're going to hit on all 4 of those picks, and the reality of it is you might hit on 2.
Here's what's wild: when you look at the 2019 draft that the Patriots took N'Keal Harry, that was a deep wide receiver draft. The Patriots just took the wrong friggin' one, which Bill had a tendency to do at that position. Can you get it right at receiver? That to me is what's so important to look at. And actually, Phil, you know what? I'm asleep at the switch here. I want to get to some. Let me do these deals first, okay? Here's a few recent ones to just mull, folks, and bear with me because I know it gets convoluted. Last year, the Panthers traded with the Bears, okay? And the Panthers traded their first round pick from last year and second round picks, and then their 2024 first round pick, which is going to be Caleb Williams, and DJ Moore. They did all that so they could get up to number 1 and take Bryce Young. Okay? Just ruminate on it. We don't have to have opinions, but that's a swap of firsts, and then this year's first, which turns into Caleb Williams plus DJ Moore. In 2021, when the Niners jumped up to go get Trey Lance at number 3, they sent Miami first round picks in 21, 22, and 23. And the Niners sent back 12, 29, and 101. So there was a first round pick swap. And here's one other last one, folks. This is really pertinent because I love this move. And it's a double move. Arizona last year. They were in 3. They made a move with Houston, allowing Houston to come up to 3. The trade with the Cardinals was like this. Arizona got the number 12 and the 33rd overall pick, plus Houston's 2024 first and a 2024 third rounder. Okay. Then they jumped back up. Arizona did, sitting there at 12, and said, you know what, let's get up there and take our guy Paris Johnson. So I'm not going to get into all the details. They just sent more crap back at the Lions, but they were able to jump back up. Phil, what do you like?
That one.
I love
like
that. The double move is
Monty. Monty Ossenfort might be able to do that again. He sits at number 4, which is going to be a coveted spot. Could he trade down to 11 with the Vikings, who are very hungry for a quarterback, for instance,
mm-hmm.
and then be at 11 and say, you know what, I'd really love to make sure we get one of these top tier receivers. So let's trade back up to 8 with Atlanta. They're pretty loaded on offensive talent. And we'll make sure we get Rome Odunze. Exactly. Like that. That's what, if he does that again, then we start calling that trade back to trade up. We start calling that move the Ossenfort. I saw somebody else call it that in somewhere in the draft media world. And I love that. If he does it again, anytime a team does this, trade down, trade back up in the same round, we're calling that the Ossenfort.
And you're adding third rounders, you're adding second rounders in the trade-off. So that's why I think the Patriots should be trying to court Minnesota right now. Find out what it's going to be. Not saying do the deal. Find out what you can extract, because they'll just say, screw it. All right, we'll take JJ McCarthy. I don't care. Go ahead, take Drake May. Go ahead, take Jaden Daniels. We're fine with whoever's left at number 4. But if the Patriots say, let's get out of here, and then maybe we can come back to number 4 with Monty, because Monty doesn't need a quarterback. You're going to add picks. I'm just saying, play the board, play the game, play the board. Phil,
if they say let's get out of here with Drake May on the board, that's such a bad move, in my opinion.
No, it isn't.
It's such a bad move. He is way too talented. He is way too physically talented. He has done too much in a bad situation where you can actually project what it might look like in a bad situation here. And listen, if you don't want to play him because you think it's borderline dangerous to have him out there, then fine. At least he's in the organization, and at least you feel as though you've got something to build on moving forward as you build your team.
Do you think the wide receiver tree and the left tackle tree are more realistic trees than the quarterback tree that I often reference?
Yes, because to me, in order to win and win at a high level, and especially win in the AFC, where Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes will be here for the next 10 years, and Joe Burrow for that matter, you have to have high-end quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what the rest of your roster looks like. You know you need that.
Wait a minute.
That's what I'm gunning for. And to me, that's what Drake May is.
All of those quarterbacks have an elite receiver at the very least, and some of them have good offensive line. I'm not going to go through the offensive.
Yeah, but they're not made. They're not made by those players.
Sure. Stephon Diggs didn't make Josh Allen that much better. Jamar Chase didn't help him make better. Joe Burrow better.
Thomas, do those guys have physical skills that are unique to them, these quarterbacks, or are they Brock Purdy?
Joe Burrow's not that unique.
He is a good athlete. His arm is not amazing. It's not Josh Allen. It's not Patrick Mahomes. It's not.
Who's a better physical prospect, Joe Burrow or Drake May?
Thomas, can you get good receivers in the second round? Are good receivers out there? Does every team have almost 2 good receivers? And we're just
how about like Tyquan Thornton
here because you haven't seen one in New England in 10 years?
How about Tyquan Thornton, huh? Debo. All right, AJ Brown.
If you want to win in the AFC, if you want to get to a Super Bowl, you need a high-end quarterback. Stop it. Stop.
The high-end quarterback doesn't turn into a high-end quarterback.
Michael Jordan
in
that don't do drugs commercial. I'm looking into the camera and I'm saying, you don't think you need a high-end quarterback to make a Super Bowl in the AFC for the next 10 years?
Oh, in the AFC. Do you need one in the NFC?
Stop it.
Stop it. Do you need one in the NFC? Just this conference. Because you don't need one in the NFC.
It doesn't matter. Are the Patriots changing conferences sometime soon? Is Patrick?
No, but I'm just saying the irrationality of the argument is that it's specific to this conference.
It is. Are you not competing with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen?
Yeah, but just because your recent history has those guys, well, okay. How come Brock Purdy's so friggin' good? Because he's got Trent Williams.
He doesn't have to beat Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen to get to the Super Bowl. That's why.
Well, Josh Allen didn't beat Patrick Mahomes to get to the Super Bowl. And he wouldn't have been in that game if he didn't have Stephon Diggs.
What I'm saying, Tom, is listen, you're not going to get me to say you don't need good receivers to win in the NFL.
I think you've been saying that.
It's easier to find good receivers. It's easier to find average tackles.
That was the original
All you need
question.
is to be average along the line.
That was the original question.
All you need to be is average along the line, and you do need receiving talent. It is much easier, and you know this. It's much easier to find high-end talent. Just because the Patriots haven't done it doesn't mean it's not easy. It's easy to find a good receiver. It should be these days.
Diggs was brought in after Allen was drafted. That makes your point. I'll make it for you. They said, hey, we got to get a player for this wild stallion. They went and they got Diggs. So that's a good point by you.
You need to shoot for the moon at quarterback. That's what I'm saying.
I just
Stop trying to win with Brock Purdy.
I just don't think he's the moon. I think he's a cardboard moon in the back of an elementary school stage that somebody just hung and everybody's going to go running into it and think it's the real moon.
Absurd. I want you to watch
the entire. Watch the sack cut up. Watch the sack cut up.
I want you to watch the entire UVA game, which I just watched last night.
Watch the NC State game and watch your shoes because you're going to throw up on him.
Listen, he's not perfect. He makes bad decisions and he misses wildly at times.
Mm-hmm. Looks like Nolan Ryan.
He also makes some absurd high-end throws where his numbers should be way better this year than they were. The number of drops is absolutely absurd. Again, this is fresh in my mind because I just watched the UVA game where he had about 7 drops on explosive plays. He had a touchdown called back because a tight end couldn't block a blitzing corner without tackling the guy. That's about a 45-yard throw on a dime to the back corner of the end zone. He does things with a team that stunk in a scheme that the league thinks stunk, that you don't know if Jaden Daniels could do it. This is, if we're comparing these two quarterbacks, that to me is a feather in May's cap, is that we've seen him in a not so great situation produce really high-end results, even if it's not super consistent. You didn't see Jaden Daniels be a high-end quarterback until he was in his second year in the same offense, which that's what you should do for a quarterback to help him out. But he's going to be going to a new offense as a pro and be surrounded by 2 first-round receivers. But
Jaden Daniels dropped to 4.
That's a high-end. I'm not saying that, but I'm just
saying
I'm
wondering.
A high-end offensive environment, and it's really hard to project what it's going to look like if he comes to New England with no offensive line and no receivers at 200 pounds, and all of a sudden you're asking him to scramble around 12 times a game because it's the only thing you can do offensively, and he weighs 200 pounds, and he doesn't like to slide. Like that would concern me. It would concern me.
And he might not.
I don't have those same concerns with Drake May.
Watch the NC State game. Listen, talk about your trade down mock, which was fun and well done. And I don't understand how the people who you do radio with from 10 to 2 don't get the concept of multiple mocks as thought provokers. What did you call them?
What did I call it? A thought exercise?
Yeah, thought exercise.
Yeah, thought exercise. So my mock, this is the Tommy Curran Memorial mock. Trade down 3 to 11 and 23 and get that future first. That's the Vikings trade that we're talking about. And at 11, unfortunately for the Patriots, the guys that I think are considered the 2 top left tackle prospects are gone. Olu Fashanu from Penn State and Joe Alt from Notre Dame. Now, I might actually like the guy I gave the Patriots at 11 better than Fashanu, because I think he's just a better player right now. Fashanu has better traits. Troy Fautanu, Tom, out of Washington, is a elite mover. Great athleticism, good enough arm length. He's not a real tall fella. He is Matt Light sized. He's about 6'4". He's
actually his hands?
Shade under 6'4".
So your big
hands are fine. Hands are 10 plus inches. So you're good on that front. Whereas Fashanu, just as an aside, a little bit of a concern for anybody that hopes the Patriots land Olu Fashanu. 8.5-inch hands. Those are Isaiah Wynn sized, and they don't even crack the first percentile of tackles that have gone to the combine over the course of the last 25
years. It's like an inch. It's like a second baseman's glove.
A little baby. Like I measured my hand against an 11.5-inch piece of paper today, Tom, and I was about an inch, maybe a little bit more than an inch short. So I think I have about.
And you go from here to here, right? You go.
I think I have about 10-inch hands. I think. Yeah. I think I've got maybe a shade under 10 inches, and 8.5 inches is tiny. Those are little baby.
Well, mine's a little bit bigger than 8, but mine is definitely not 11.
So you might have 8.5-inch hands, which is fine for a sports writer. You're not being asked to
no, they're 9.
Yeah, look at you. You're past 8.5 inches there. Easy.
Yeah.
So imagine hands like that trying to latch on to a 270-pound defensive end. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Is that Kyle Van Noy on the TV behind you?
No, it's Ricky Martin.
Same thing.
Wow, he looks fantastic.
Van Noy, the great thing about Kyle Van Noy is the number of without comment golf video swings he sends me. Just sends it. Him teeing off. Nothing else.
I love that.
Oh, that looks great. Send back 9 comments on what he could do better as I wander out and shoot a 97.
Can I ask you first, what do you think about that? You like that? A 6'4" tackle with long arms and big hands who's a good athlete. You okay with that?
Yes,
At
a
11?
tackle.
Okay.
In a tackle deep class, I defer to the experts and say that's a good player. Meanwhile, at 23,
they get a receiver. This is specifically an X receiver. This is A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. 6'2", 205 pounds, 4'3", 440, blazing speed, unbelievable explosiveness, was 98th percentile in the broad jump. The vertical jump was also absurd. This guy's a freaky athlete. Good body control, Tom. If you watch him, it looks like he has pretty natural hands. I think if you talk to scouts, they would say not as consistent as they would like. The thing I think that has him at 23 overall in general, and why people are assuming he'll be a back half of the first round pick as opposed to in this same class with Odunze and Neighbors and Harrison, because he does have amazing physical skill. The reason he's not with those guys is because he's just not as consistent as those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the league is a little curious as to whether or not his engine is going to run hot enough on a play-to-play basis at the next level. But if it does, then you get maybe a superstar in 23. Like I kind of like that idea.
All right, Phil, real quick then. They still have a second-round pick. Do they go get Penix in your draft and satisfy Roberts need a top-rate young quarterback?
No. I think if this is what you're doing, if you're Elliott Wolf, you're doing all you can to provide Robert Kraft with evidence that Spencer Rattler, who's going to be your 3rd-round pick, is quote-unquote top rate. And so you're going to come up with the most dynamic highlight package the world has ever seen of Spencer Rattler, and you're going to send it directly to Robert Kraft's office and say, I know we're taking him in the 3rd round, but he is what you're looking for, Robert. Don't worry about it. We're going to go ahead at 34 overall. We're going to take Ladd McConkey because we really need to reshape this entire receiver room. And now we got A.D. Mitchell in the 1st. That's our X. Ladd McConkey is our Z. You put him in motion. You align him inside. You align him outside. He ran in the 4.3s and the 42. He's got speed to threaten safeties, runs great routes. And now we've got Pop Douglas or KJ Osborne in the slot. And that's a real NFL caliber receiver room.
I'll tell you, when I watched Ladd McConkey at the Combine and the way he ran the gauntlet, absolutely did not deviate from the line at all. You talk about precision and body control. It was absolutely incredible to watch because you'd see some of the other receivers wavering back and forth between, and Ladd McConkey was down the friggin' line, hands catching the entire time. But you can also tell Robert too, after you take those 3, and plus Robert, and we're taking Spencer Rattler, but we have 2 first-round picks next year, right? Because Minnesota gave you 2 once because you're not making the deal otherwise.
You have your 1st and you have Minnesota's 1st for next year.
So you got Ladd McConkey, A.D. Mitchell, and Troy.
Fautanu.
Right.
Right.
Just checking. Plus 2 firsts for next year.
Right.
Which you could use on Quinn Ewers to get up to number 5 and take him. It's a win. It's a win. You're a 7-win team at best this year anyway. So don't go sniffing around. Even though you expect and hope to be in the playoffs, you're going to struggle. The Athletic and Chad Graff and one of his sidekicks there, their NFL writer, did a similar exercise. And they came up with, and I don't think this is very likely, this proposal was the double move, Phil. The proposed deal, number 1, is the Patriots send number 3 to Minnie for 11, 23, and a 25 3rd-round pick, which I don't think is enough anyway. But after they get that, the Patriots then shoot back up and give Arizona 11 and 68, which the Patriots have, which would be a 3rd-rounder this year, right? 32, 64, yeah. And a future pick. And with these, what's that?
No, go ahead. I'm just
and with these picks, the Patriots would take JJ McCarthy at 4. They would take the tackle Mims. They would take your guy McConkey, and they would take later on in the draft. They did a longer draft. Stover, the tight end from Ohio State. It's a double move.
It's the double move. So at 4, so I'm trying to keep track, and I'm going to work my way through this along with the listeners.
I know.
At 4, they take JJ McCarthy.
Yep.
And then they had a pick at 23.
They still had 23. They take Mims.
Okay. Amarius Mims was the tackle out of Georgia.
Yep.
And then they take 34.
Yep. 34. They take McConkey. And then they take this stubby but productive tight end Stover from Ohio State.
Listen, I don't hate that. I don't hate that. If they can pull that off, that's a pretty complicated thing to trade down from 3 when you're on the clock at 3 to 11. And then you'd have to have this worked out ahead of time with your guy Monty Austin for it, where, hey, we're shooting right back up to 4, but we're going to make it worth your while. You're getting 11. You're getting future picks as well, or picks down the line as well. And we end up with our quarterback, a tackle, and a receiver with 3 picks in the top 34. I don't hate it.
The Patriots would have to give up more than that to get back up from 11, though. They can't give 11, 68 and a future pick to Arizona for 4. They might have to give the other first round pick. That's what they would have to do. They'd have to give the 2025 first round pick that they would have siphoned off of Minnesota.
Right.
Not in this deal because they don't have them getting a first round pick. But again, I base the Patriots trading down on getting 2 picks this year, a swap of picks and an extra first round pick, and next year a number 1.
What if the next year pick is a number 2? Because that's closer to what the Niners gave up to get that Miami Dolphins pick to draft Trey Lance in terms of the trade charts and the points and how they all stack up. That's a closer match.
I think I would be more inclined 55-45 to stay put and take the quarterback, because I think that your mobility with having 2 first round picks next year is so much more enhanced. You're Minnesota. Minnesota can get into the top 3. Patriots are probably going to have, between 5 and 15 easily as their own first round pick, and Minnesota probably not going to be that high either. So ideally the Patriots could have 2 top 8 picks. You don't have to suck this year, but that's not beyond the realm.
I think Minnesota might not be that bad. Even if it's Drake May. Drake May with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Oh baby. Oh baby. That's all I'll say.
All right. We've gone a half an hour here. Doing all the things we tend to do. Babbling on. Folks, we are having a blast with the spitballing. And I know that, there's probably somebody out there like, oh my God, get here. We kind of feel the same way, but we're trying to find and create new content every single time. Make sure you listen to Phil's Next Pat's podcast, where he is continuing to plumb the conversation about head coach as he did with Sebastian Vollmer and the prospects of Gerard Mayo's success. And Phil is constantly talking to experts around the NFL and the scouting game to try and get intel. Phil, that's going to be a wrap for today's pod. I appreciate you. You're doing a great job, by the way, on Sports Hub.
Appreciate you too. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, it's fun just to get to yell at somebody not named Tom Curran.
It's unbelievable. Did you hear me?
I did yell at you today. I got fired up.
Today on the pod?
Yeah, today. You don't remember that? I was screaming at you earlier.
Yeah, no, I remember. I didn't think it was that. I mean, it's because you were getting frustrated because I was right and you were wrong.
No, you were making. So let's bring this whole thing full circle now. Making arguments in bad faith.
No, I wasn't. I asked you, why not get the wide receiver or offensive tackle first? And that,
you basically said Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow are good because they have elite receivers, which I don't disagree. It doesn't hurt.
I mean,
why those guys are good players. Those are good players.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts is a good player too. He's also a Super Bowl quarterback, as was Jimmy Garoppolo, because of the receivers and the guys around him.
It's a little easier to get one than the other. That's all I'm saying.
Because of where you are? I don't know if it is. All right. It's easier to get one than the other.
There's like 45 good receivers in football. There's like 10 good quarterbacks. Simple math.
Yeah, but you didn't think Brock Purdy was a good quarterback before this year.
He's fine.
These guys pop up. Quarterback tree, there's a quarterback tree. I'm going to sit by the quarterback tree. See ya.